U.S. President Barack Obama and Congress agree to keep the focus on the fight against Ebola. In East Africa, breathalyzers curb traffic carnage on Kenyan roads. And the king of reggae will become the face of an international marijuana brand. Africa 54 starts right now.
Hello and welcome. I'm Vincent McCory. This is Africa 54. Tonight we begin with a special warning from U.S. President Barack Obama and two congressional panels that despite waning media attention, Ebola remains a serious global threat. The president has asked the U.S. Congress for an additional $6.2 billion in emergency funding to fight the deadly disease in West Africa. VOA's Cindy Sain reports from Capitol Hill.
President Obama got an update on the Ebola crisis at the White House, where he urged the world to remain focused on the outbreak, even though the spotlight has faded.
We are nowhere near out of the woods yet in West Africa. The good news is in parts of Liberia, our efforts, both civilian and military, are really paying dividends, and we are seeing the curve bending so that we are on track with diligence, dealing with the hot spots that may still reemerge to actually get a handle on that disease.
Experts are praising U.S. leadership in fighting Ebola, but say continued vigilance is needed. On Capitol Hill, Center for Disease Control Director Thomas Frieden testified that intensive public health efforts can stop Ebola.
In Nigeria, they were able to surge and stop a cluster from spreading. Mali is now in the balance of whether it becomes the next Nigeria, having successfully contained a cluster, or the next Liberia or Sierra Leone with widespread transmission.
70% of new Ebola infections stem from contact with a deceased, making the role of burial teams crucial in containing the disease. Brett Sedgwick of the nonprofit Global Communities told another congressional panel.
The work of burial teams is both backbreaking and heartbreaking. I have accompanied burial teams to seen the incredible professionalism with which they operate.
The U.S. and the international community need to think beyond Ebola to establish basic health services in West Africa, says the vice president of the nonprofit International Medical Corps, Rabi Torbey.
People are not just dying from Ebola, they're dying from malaria, they're dying from waterborne diseases. Women are dying from the lack of facilities where they could go for safe delivery, and this needs to be done as soon as possible.
President Obama has called for Congress to quickly authorize emergency funding to fight Ebola. Cindy Sain, VOA News on Capitol Hill.
Well, be sure to stay with Voice of America because coming up in just about 2 hours at 18:30 UTC, Straight Talk Africa's Shaka Sal will host a 90-minute TV, radio, web simulcast, Ebola, Knowledge is Life, town hall special featuring top experts on Ebola. We'll also have participation from a live studio audience, so be sure to tune in at 18:30 UTC. Well, in North Africa, the political and security crisis in Libya is deepening with competing governments and, according to Amnesty International, widespread human rights violations committed with impunity. VOA's Al Pesson has more from London.
Libya has been in a state of almost constant conflict since the fall of Muammar Gaddafi 3 years ago, and the fighting continues. Rival governments try to control the east and west of the country, but militias hold much of the real power, representing former Gaddafi supporters, Islamists, and other groups. In a new report focusing on Tripoli and the West, Amnesty International condemns all parties for widespread human rights abuses and violations of international law. Researcher Magdalena Mugrabi wrote the report.
We've seen, 3 years where instead of investigating crimes, instead of investigating human rights violations, having a sort of transitional justice process, the authorities, the successive governments were actually unable to deal with that situation.
Mugrabi says human rights deteriorated through 3 years of various governments empowering militias in an effort to bring them into the mainstream, but not being able to control them or hold them accountable for their actions. and the political situation has deteriorated too. The Libyan Supreme Court invalidated the election of the latest parliament, which still claims power from a remote town in the east, while militia commander and former Gaddafi-era general Khalifa Haftar has installed another government in Tripoli. That means more fighting and more suffering for the Libyan people are ahead, says Chris Doyle, director of the Council for Arab-British Understanding.
It means that there is still a struggle for power within the country. There is no legitimate authority. It means there's going to be a further conflict now to assert who actually has the legitimacy to run the country.
Doyle says some Libyans want another strongman like Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, while a vocal but small minority see the Islamic State group as a model. Meanwhile, Libyans continue to flee toward Europe, creating another humanitarian crisis.
If we do not address the situation in Libya, we are going to see more of that, and we are going to see increased radicalization and extremism on the southern borders of Europe.
The 2011 revolution created great hope for oil-rich and relatively well-educated Libya. Now, Doyle says, the rival groups need a foreign mediator, and there's none they would all trust. So Amnesty International is calling directly on militia commanders to end the abuses.
There are certain things that, not only can be done, but must be done by the armed groups, because otherwise they can be liable to prosecution by the International Criminal Court.
But that call is not likely to have much impact on Libyan commanders accustomed to impunity, who believe they're fighting an all-or-nothing battle for the future of their country. Al Pessin, VOA News, London.
Well, Burkina Faso has a new interim president. Michel Kafando was sworn in Tuesday with the task of steering the West African country back to civilian rule. Mr. Kafando pledged to respect both the Constitution and the Transitional Charter during a nationally televised ceremony.
Notre pays ne saurait être une république bananière.
Our country will never be a banana republic. Our eyes are open and things will never be the same again. We will scrupulously respect the political order in this country.
Well, Burkina Faso's transitional government has named Lieutenant Colonel Isaac Zida as Prime Minister 4 days after he restored the country's constitution under pressure from the African Union and the West. Zida originally declared himself head of state on November 1st after mass protests toppled President Blaise Compaoré. As Prime Minister, Zida will help interim President Kafando to appoint a 25-member government that will steer the country to new elections in 2015. Mr. Kafando and Lieutenant Colonel Zida will not be allowed to run for president in the upcoming election. While in the United States, the governor of Missouri has named members of an independent commission that will help chart a path to reconciliation between the white and African-American communities following the killing of a black teenager by a white policeman in the town of Ferguson. The commission will look for ways to heal the divisions exposed by the tragic incident. VOA's Latza Hoke reports.
The fury of the protests that followed the shooting of 18-year-old Michael Brown in the St. Louis suburb of Ferguson could reignite again in a few days when a grand jury is expected to decide whether to indict the police officer who shot Brown during a street confrontation. Missouri Governor Jay Nixon has declared a state of emergency, and National Guard troops have been ordered to prepare to support police if necessary. The lawyer for Brown's parents appealed for peace.
As we wait, everybody is anxious. They want to see what the grand jury is going to decide. In the meantime, we've made it crystal clear from the very beginning that this family wants everyone to remain peaceful, they want them to remain calm and dignified as we await this decision.
Members of African American communities across the United States are watching the developments in Ferguson. Many believe racial discrimination is still widespread in this country.
This is just not about Ferguson. This has been going on in every city in America. Black young men have been marginalized. They have been dehumanized in every city in America. And so this is just I think the Ferguson situation and Mike Brown's situation has brought this whole thing to a head.
In an effort to build a more just community in the St. Louis area, Missouri's governor has formed an independent biracial commission to find the root causes of the racial divide and recommend steps to fight social inequality.
But while they are clearly a diverse group, they are united by the shared passion to promote understanding, to hasten healing, to ensure equal opportunities in education and employment, and to safeguard the civil rights of all of our citizens.
The Commission has two co-chairs, Pastor Starsky Wilson.
Inasmuch as our voices are independent, our future is interdependent. So we will listen and learn from one another.
And Rich McClure, chairman of the St. Louis Regional Board of the nonprofit organization Teach for America.
You don't have to see eye to walk arm in arm. And we've had too much of you and them, and not enough of we and us and together.
Members of the panel are facing a hard task as they seek to remedy a problem that has been plaguing the United States and other societies worldwide.
This is just not a year or 2 years. This is hundreds of years this has been going on. I hate that happened to my son, but it must stop with my son.
The panel will listen to complaints and suggestions with the goal of finding a model for a just community in the region and beyond. Zlatica Hoke, VOA News, Washington.
We want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we covered. Join the conversation on Facebook. The address is Africa 54. And check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. Coming up, as China's stature grows, so have tensions with other countries. Stay with us.
What exactly is Ebola?
Can I catch Ebola through the
Are
air?
the people who have it contagious?
What is our government doing about Ebola?
What are the symptoms of Ebola?
You have questions about Ebola? Straight Talk Africa has answers. VOA presents Straight Talk Africa, Ebola, Knowledge is Life, a special town hall meeting with leading experts on the front lines who will answer many of the questions surrounding the Ebola outbreak. VOA presents Straight Talk Africa, Ebola, Knowledge is Life, November 19th only on VOA.
Well, be sure to follow Straight Talk Africa's new Twitter account at VOA Shaka to follow Wednesday's live Twitter feed and updates on the VOA Knowledge is Life Ebola Town Hall special hosted by Shaka Sali. Also, don't forget to use the hashtag VOA Ebola when contributing to the discussions on social media. Today's Ebola special begins at 18:30 UTC. Well, China's role as host of the recent APEC Leaders Summit came at a time of increased scrutiny over China's rising economic and political clout. VOA's Bill Ide speaks with Beijing residents about what it means to be a world power and why China's rise has provoked some tensions abroad.
For China, the APEC meetings were a carefully choreographed display of power and confidence. To ensure the colorful show went as planned, Beijing took serious steps. Factories shut down to clear the skies, and prominent Chinese activist Hu Jia, a critic of the government, says restrictions he faced under house arrest during APEC were worse than when he was in prison.
Xi Jinping has taken measures to safeguard stability in the hope that under the great temptation of its economy, no domestic and international activists will voice or mention the dark side of China's development.
Not all Chinese are as pessimistic about Beijing's rule. Indeed, many people here see the concerns expressed by China's neighbors about its expansive territorial claims as an inevitable reaction to Beijing's rise.
As China rises, that is perhaps putting more pressure on other countries, and those countries may want to suppress China.
China is not pursuing military expansion, but cooperation. Other countries shouldn't be so nervous. The world needs the support of several powerful economies, and as one of those countries, China has a responsibility to do its part.
In the U.S. Capitol, China's growing influence is on the minds of Americans as well. And for some, it's a source of concern.
In another 20 years, they'll own us like Japan used to, because they're buying up everything we have in this country.
We're so dependent on them. So I'm in banking, and most of our companies are having to outsource for the things that we buy so cheap.
Given their monetary and political, military wealth, I think it'll be a leader. So whether that's for good or not, I think it's to be determined.
These are still early days for China as an emergent global power. For its neighbors, Beijing's reputation will hinge more on its own actions than how the United States views it, says Asia analyst Bonnie Glaser.
I would say that countries around China very much formulate their own judgments about China's intentions and areas where they should cooperate with China and where they shouldn't.
For now, China's neighbors are eager to sign new free trade deals, but they are also wary about China's expansive maritime territorial claims. And because of that, Beijing's image as either a benevolent rising economic power or authoritarian threat still hangs in the balance. Bill Ide, VOA News, Beijing.
On out to East Africa. Kenyan roads claim more than 3,000 lives each year. In a bid to reduce drunk driving-related accidents, breathalyzers are being deployed throughout the country. A special task force has also been charged with ensuring the roads are kept free from those who violate the law. And authorities say it seems to be paying off. Lenny Ruvaga has more from Nairobi.
It is 10 p.m. along one of Kenya's busiest highways, Jogoo Road in Nairobi. Police have set up a roadblock to conduct random checks for intoxicated drivers. Breathalyzers, which measure blood alcohol content from air expelled from a person's mouth, were first introduced in Kenya 3 years ago to curb a steep increase in drunken driving accidents and deaths. A breathalyzer kit such as this one costs approximately $2,000. And the National Transport and Safety Authority has deployed 12 kits throughout the country. The NTSA works in tandem with the Kenyan police, so police cannot solicit bribes from drivers caught intoxicated. Cosmas Ngesu from the NTSA says this approach helps with enforcement of drunk driving laws.
But we have also done it. We are partnered with the Kenya Anti-Corruption Commission. We also monitor this operation, send their people, so we are checking on issues of corruption.
Since January alone, more than 3,000 people have died on Kenyan roads, with 80% of those deaths attributed to drunken driving. Ngesu says those figures represent a drop from just a few years ago, and he says the public is getting the intended message from the police breathalyzer checks.
We used to record a high level of crashes, particularly over the weekend and months, caused by people driving from pubs drunk. But since we started, the statistics have gone down. Additionally, we have created awareness. Now many people choose to take taxis home after drinking instead of drinking and driving. So the awareness is created.
And this is why George Karao looks forward to the weekend, when he can catch up with friends over drinks after a long week and not worry about driving home. He is a client of Smart Fellas, a cab company which caters to clients who are over the legal alcohol limit. Within an hour's notice, they will meet you at the bar or restaurant and drive you home in your own car for an affordable membership fee of $20 to $50 per year. Karao says he signed up as soon as he heard of the service.
Road conduct has been a main concern for everyone. And so when you have a service like this, you have the option of still having a good time and getting home in one piece without causing any accidents. And it's not a service for the rich people per se. Anybody can use the service.
The taxi fees are cheaper than getting caught on the road intoxicated and having to go to court. Those found guilty of drunk driving face fines of up to $1,000 and 2 years in jail. Lenny Ruvaga for VOA News, Nairobi.
Very smart there. Well, it's time now for a short break. Still to come on Africa 54. The natural mystic of reggae become the first face of a global marijuana brand. We'll be right back.
If you've just joined us, I'm Mariama Diallo, and here is a quick recap of today's headlines. In Burkina Faso, authorities appoint Army officer Lieutenant Colonel Isaac Zida as transitional prime minister. In Kenya, 4 people are stabbed to death in Mombasa. That's following security raids on mosques that authorities accused of having links to Islamic militants. And fighting continues between rival Libya Dawn and Zintan militias in Kikla. China sends hundreds of peacekeeping troops to South Sudan on a UN mission to protect the country's oil fields and Chinese workers. That's it for today. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
Welcome back to Africa 54. Here is what's trending. While the family of reggae icon Bob Marley and a Seattle-based firm announced they are launching the first global cannabis brand with marijuana products sold under a name long tied to a plant he lovingly called The Herb. The brand, Marley Natural, marks the first time the family's name would adorn packages of cannabis products sold in countries and U.S. states that have taken steps to decriminalize and legalize pot use and sales. Now, the Marley Natural brand would likely be seen on cannabis and other products and accessories by late 2015. Well, next up, and the sexiest man alive is Thor. Actually, it's the actor who plays Thor, Chris Hemsworth, as bestowed by People magazine. The Avengers favorite takes over from Maroon 5 singer Adam Levine, who was named the sexiest man alive in 2013. Celebrity watchers had widely expected Guardians of the Galaxy star Chris Pratt or future Oscar host Neil Patrick Harris to take the hunky crown, but Hemsworth surprised, throwing his hammer into the race late in the game. And finally, today is World Toilet Day, and in India, a huge cake was unveiled in New Delhi in the shape of an Indian toilet. The 700-kilogram cake was presented at an event hosted by Sulabh International, a non-profit organization that works in the area of clean sanitation and has also built many toilets across the country. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi has made installing toilets throughout India a top priority, appealing to the diaspora to build at least one toilet in the village of their origin in India. And that is what is trending today. While the sailing teams of the Volvo Ocean Race have departed Cape Town, South Africa Wednesday on the notorious Abu Dhabi leg of the race. The British skipper of Abu Dhabi Ocean Racing claimed an epic victory in the first leg of the race. VOA's Caroline Turner has the highlights.
The first leg of the Volvo Ocean Race is nearly 6,900 nautical miles from Spain to South Africa. Throughout the first week of the race, each skipper took a turn leading the fleet, and then Abu Dhabi pulled ahead of the competition.
Clearly it's going to be a very close race. I think the leg's gone very well for us. We've sailed very conservatively, tried not to take any risks. Got the big decision around the Cape Verde Islands and the doldrums right, which has put us in the position we're in. But you know, we're certainly not able to just sail away from everybody else, and we have to fight for every single mile.
Near the equator, teams were caught in the doldrums. When winds move in opposite directions in the northern and southern hemispheres, they cancel each other out. With seas like glass, an Alva Medica sailor climbs to the top of the mast in search of wind.
The pressure fills in. The line is about probably 60 degrees off our bow, where it starts to fill in a bit. You know, directly abeam of us is really light.
When storms threatened, teams took advantage of the rain to take an onboard shower. The Dong Fen team lost their advantage when the rudder on one of the main lines to the large sail broke.
We lost one of the strongest points on the boat. We received all the big sails we received on this point. It's gone. Yeah, we got straight off. A bit disappointing. A bit scary, actually.
After repairs, they were sailing at 20 knots again. There were bigger challenges when the discovery of icebergs tested navigators to the limit. When race control ordered a new ice skate exclusion zone, all teams were forced to change course.
It doesn't take much ice to sink a boat like this, so yeah, the growlers are probably the worst because they're the ones you can't see and the ones that don't show up on radar. with 90% of their body under the water. So you hit one of those at speed with a boat like this one, it's going to be catastrophic.
Having an ice gate puts in another complication for the routes. For us, it's almost, I guess you could say it's a good thing because it makes it harder for the leaders to escape and maybe opens some opportunities for us to come back.
It must feel kind of funny racing for 3 weeks and still being as close as when we started. Yeah, it's just neck and neck the whole time.
After almost 3 weeks at sea, Abu Dhabi led by just 6.4 nautical miles to win as they sailed to the finish line in Cape Town to claim victory for the first leg of the race. The win is a personal triumph for skipper Ian Walker.
Oh, it feels good. It feels fantastic. We're on top of the world. So proud of my team. So proud of everybody on board, but everybody on the shore team as well. It's 3 years ago we broke our mast when leaving Alicante. Probably one of the lowest ebbs of my whole sailing career, and to now be here and get such a fantastic welcome in Cape Town, it puts everything in perspective.
12 minutes later, Dongfeng race team came in second, followed by Team Brunel, another 30 nautical miles behind. Next, Team Vestas Win, then American-led Alva Medica, followed by the all-girl team SCA in 6th place and Mapfre in last. The Cape Town Welcoming Committee kicked off the festivities at the Volvo Ocean Race Village, where festival goers welcomed the sailing teams, and even non-sailors got a hands-on sailing experience with the sailing simulators. The partying and events continue until the teams depart for Leg 2 on Wednesday, November 19th. Carolyn Turner, VOA News.
Well, and that's our show for Friday, or rather for today, where I am. Well, be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. And don't forget, coming up in just about 90 minutes at 18:30 UTC, Straight Talk Africa's Shaka Sali will host a 90-minute TV, radio, web simulcast, Ebola, Knowledge is Life, Town Hall special featuring top experts on Ebola. We'll also have participation from a live studio audience, so be sure to tune in at 18:30 UTC. Thanks for watching, and from all of us here in Washington, have a good night. We are able to touch on things that are important to people on an everyday basis. Hello and welcome. I'm Vincent McCory. This is Africa 54. In a lively half hour, news, sports, health, lifestyle information, comments from our viewers. Africa 54, the best for Africa, about Africa. Join us only on VOA.
What exactly is Ebola?
Can I catch Ebola through the
Are
air?
the people who have it contagious?
What is our government doing about Ebola?
What are the symptoms of Ebola?
You have questions about Ebola? Straight Talk Africa has answers. VOA presents Straight Talk Africa, Ebola, Knowledge is Life, a special town hall meeting with leading experts on the front lines who will answer many of the questions surrounding the Ebola outbreak. VOA presents Straight Talk Africa, Ebola, Knowledge is Life, November 19th only on VOA.